Yeah, he's definitely a little into participating this evening. So welcome. As you go through the practice, I won't be able to see the questions on chat because I'm too far from the screen, and I don't would have to futz a lot to get to that. But if you have an emergency question that you feel something is really wrong, the pose isn't serving you, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Just make sure, generally speaking, even though it's a really gentle class, gentle can be a very misleading term. So first of all, some classes that are labeled as gentle are just not incredibly intense. It's like incredibly intense, gentle, but this is a gentle class, and there's a lot of opportunity to just rest and tune in. And that's just, at least at this point, that's how the class has evolved. So I'm going to stay sitting, which will help me to project my voice. I will, for the most part, I will be demonstrating things that we'll be doing. But if it's something done lying down and you don't need to see me, then I will say stay sitting up, so my voice will project a little better. So just make sure you have some blankets or towels. Maybe we'll do a little restorative pose later, and a strap is handy. You could always use a tie, and you could always use bath towels for your instead of official yoga blankets. I have mostly towels here, and maybe a few blocks. If you don't have yoga blocks, a few small pillows like that, can be used to make you comfortable. So with no more babbling from me, come to lying down and get cozy. And you can take a blanket or pillow under your head. One of the librarians was talking before class, before you got here, that if you have like some sensitivity in your low back, and if you have sensitivity in your sacrum or tail, you might want to consider, instead of lying just on the mat, especially if your mat's on a wooden floor, you may want to unfold a blanket and just open it up so that when you lie on the mat, you have some other layer of softness underneath you. Feel free to do that. And you don't have to lie with your legs straight or bent. You don't have to have a cat next to you. So just get cozy. So as I've mentioned before, cats are the ultimate yogis. There's a reading I share sometimes. I don't have it handy, but since one of my three, Albus, is here, it reminded me of this poem. It's an excerpt from a poem called Catalog, and the excerpt is called Cats Sleep Fat. And I forget the name of the poet, unfortunately, at the moment, but it talks about cats in a way that just reminds me how good at yoga they are. When they are active, so if they're doing yoga, there's no comparison to them. The way they leap and the way they dive and the way they pause in midair and the way they use their limbs, it's really amazing to watch. And that even goes for big wild cats too, not just our little cats. But when they rest, they mean business. So a lot of times people think of rest and relaxation, that's like a treat that you have to do something to get that treat. So, but really it's something that we need. So whether we're moving in this class or whether we're resting, just bring your intention. It sounded like attention, but bring your intention to that. Be committed to that. No matter what you are doing, don't force anything, but just welcome, whether it's movement or stillness, whatever you're doing, just welcome that into your evening. So as you're lying down here on your mat, I'm going to give you a few things that you can look at. So first, notice how you place your head, and the sense is one ear dropping down to one shoulder. And we're just going to be scanning for maybe some habitual things that maybe if we correct now, it might help to make us feel more balanced, not only in our practice, but in our days. So a lot of us have a head tilt to one side. So if you could feel that, or even you could touch your head to feel that, see if you can get the center back of your skull down. And then notice if your chin is jutting up. And if you're doing that, you're kind of condensing the back of the neck, which isn't so great. Or if you have so many pillows under your head that your chin is like this. So we want to have freedom in the front of the neck, in the throat area, in the front of the neck, and in the back of the neck. Create that as well. And then turn your head really super slowly one side to the other, not a full turn, just a little bit. Turning to one side, back through center, turning to the other side. You can do that 1 or 2 times, just to notice if there's any restrictions and if there's any barriers that you're bumping into as you make that simple movement. And then scan your body, notice your limbs, how you place them, notice how your arms feel today. Did you do a lot of work? Are your arms tired? Were you on your feet a lot? Are your feet tired? And then notice we're gonna notice our spine and ribs through the pathway of our back. So notice how much of your back is touching the mat. You might feel that your upper back is definitely down and maybe everything else does not feel very mellow to the mat. So just notice, and again, we're not trying to correct anything, don't shift around, just notice if you can feel your shoulder blades digging into the mat or the blanket underneath you. Notice if you come down a little lower to your midrib section, do you feel little of those midribs heavy to the mat, or do they feel like they're floating? And notice your low back curve, the lumbar spine, which is if you're lying down, is going to curve away from the mat. If you're sitting up, the spine's going to curve forward. So notice that curve and just notice how it feels. Sometimes at the end of the day, the curve of our low back is exaggerated from all the rapid movements we did and maybe not taking care of ourselves as we go. So the first movement we're going to do is pelvic tuck and tilt, which is very well known in yoga, but I also do it a little bit more informed by my melt practice. It's a slightly different way of doing it. And we're doing it in a way not to create a big change, but to just dial our awareness back into very, very important, subtle movements that we can do. So lying on your back, you can use your hands as a tool here. So if you're going to use your hands, take them in this position. I'll describe it to you if you can't see the screen. So my fingers are pointed down and I'm touching my thumb tips together, and I'm touching my pointer fingers together. The fingers are all straight and relaxed. So I'm making like an upside down, or maybe it's not upside down, it's like a diamond shape. And you're going to place this on your abdomen with the pubic bone. And depending on the length of your fingers, the other fingers might get into your hip creases a little bit. So you're going to get a lot of feedback from these areas as we do our pelvic tilts and tucks. And the main difference between the way I'm going to do it here, as opposed to where you might have experienced in a yoga class, including mine, is instead of tilting on one part of the breath and tucking on the other, we're going to use our exhales to get us into either the tilt or the tuck, and the inhales to investigate while we're there. And of course, at the time that I explain it to you, you can do a lot, but there's no rush here. So when you're ready, if you maybe started already, but I'm just going to give you some things to notice. The next time you exhale, create a tuck. So when you tuck, you're very gently kind of lifting the pubic bone up. It is like a wave. It kind of comes up a little bit and it's kind of cresting toward the belly button. Inhale there in the tuck, relax your bum. The next time you exhale, create your tilt. So now just send the pubic bone the other way. The pubic bone now goes away from the belly button, and it might feel like the belly button is higher than the pubic bone. Inhale there. And when you're ready, exhale, create your tuck. It doesn't really work very well sitting up, by the way. You really want to be on the mat to do this. So as you go through these tilts and tucks, again, we want to keep the movement created by the muscles that support the part of the spine roughly in between the pubic bone and the belly button. So don't use your legs, don't firm your glutes, don't lift your butt. Your butt should be just hanging on down. Don't use your toes, and keep the movement very subtle, the breath natural, and observe on the inhale. When you're in a tuck position, you might feel that a little more of the back of your pelvis is down and the low back curve is temporarily diminished. And as you inhale, you might feel that the weight tips down more toward your tail, and the low back curve is a little bit more noticeable. And keep going back and forth. And also, if you do have sensitivity, it was one of the students, I got the sense that there was some sensitivity in the tailbone and in the very low parts of the spine. That could be from an injury. It could also be if you're very slender and you just don't have a lot of padding. Some people have their sacrum, which is the bone in between, it's fused bone, it's fused vertebrae right in the center of the pelvic structure. You don't have a lot of padding there. that could feel uncomfortable when it's on the floor moving. So again, you could have a little blanket under there to soften that up. But these kind of movements are really important to the health of that part of the spine. And they're also really key movements. If you control them, it also helps develop some very subtle core control. That's very important. So the next time you find yourself in a tucked position where you've exhaled, you create your tuck, your low back is more down, your pubic bone maybe feels higher than your belly button, take a breath or two there, a complete breath, noticing what you notice. And then when you're ready, instead of creating a tilt on your next exhale, just release your tuck. Release your tuck. So you come back to, again, a neutral spine. You're not doing anything to change it. Now, we've hardly done anything, but just for the possibility of noticing something interesting, notice after doing just that one maneuver of the pelvic tilt and tuck, if anything changed, anything that you noticed when we scan our upper back, mid back, lower back, notice if there's any change in the connection, the way your back body meets the mat. And then when you're ready, bend your knees if, well, your knees are probably already bent. Bend your knees and ease your way over to your side. Come over to your side and come to sitting. I'll give you a moment to get here. I thought it can be a little time consuming, but I thought it might be nice to do a little, few little activities for the feet today. Maybe you are on your feet a lot, you're enjoying the nice warm weather, but maybe your feet are a little tired. So sit in a way that you can access your feet. So you don't have to sit on the floor. You can sit in a chair, anywhere where you can grab a foot. And since I can't see most of you, rights and left won't matter too much. So let's just say you start with your right foot. So start with your right foot, and we're going to thread our fingers in between the toes with the opposite hand. So if you're doing your right foot, you're going to use your left hand and vice versa. So you're going to take your pinky finger and tuck it in between your little toe and the second toe. And then you're going to keep sliding or wiggling the fingers into your toe spaces. Sometimes there are toes that are so tight that they do not allow you to stick a finger in there, and that's okay. So you'll have either 4 or less toes in between, 4 or less fingers in between the toes, and the thumb is going to be hanging out. So just rest your thumb on your inner arch and rest your hand and try and hold on to your foot in a way that is neutral. So in other words, here, my foot, I'm looking at the sole of my foot, I'm showing you the toes, and that might be okay for demo, but try and have your foot neutral, really, really passive. And we're going to circle the ankles around, but we're not going to have our ankles do it. We're going to have the hand that's doing it. So just circle your ankles super slow a few times. Try and keep the legs super passive, and then circle the other way. And you can do that a few times. And while we're doing the movement in the ankle joint, we're also maybe getting a little more space between the toes. Now, the second movement, this is where the yoga handshake gets its name from, is you're going to create like a pointing of the toes and a flexing of the ankle. But again, you're going to do it with the movement of your hands. Albus, I don't know if you're just too interesting. Folks may not be able to see if they need to. So you're going to do this pointing and flex, but you're going to do that with the movement of your arm and try and prevent the leg from doing the movement. Let the leg be relaxed, let the foot be relaxed. It might be really hard to do that. It might be really hard to do that. Then pause here. Find your thumb again, your thumb that didn't have a job to do, and reach your thumb as far down along the arch of the foot as it can get. And we're not on the sole of the foot, we're on the inner arch of the foot. Now, it depends on where the size of your hand, the size of your feet. And wherever that thumb lands, give a little compression there and then drag the thumb up toward the toe, but stop before you get to that big toe knuckle, because that's not an area we want to mess with, especially if our feet are tender. So you're going to drag the thumb up the inner or arch of your foot a few times. If it doesn't feel good, maybe bring the thumb more on the sole of the foot. That can feel nice. So again, we're creating space with our fingers in between the toes, and we're getting a nice little massage here. Good. And then when you're ready, just pause, and then slowly release your fingers from the toes. Wiggle your toes around. Notice if the foot you just worked on feels a little different from the foot we're going to do next. So switch your feet. So if you start with the right foot, you're now on the left. And you're going to take your other hand, your right hand, from the sole of the foot, take your pinky finger in between the pinky toe and the little toe. And then the ring finger comes between the second and the third toe. The middle finger becomes between the third and the fourth. Your index finger comes in between the big toe and the second toe, and your thumb's just hanging out. Wee, happy thumb. So just take a moment to notice how it feels to have your fingers stuck in here. And notice if there's any toes that really do not allow your fingers to get through. Then keep your leg as passive and relaxed as you can. You don't have to be sitting like me. I'm just trying to sit in a way that maybe you can see a little bit. And now we're just going to circle the ankle around, but we're not doing it from the ankle. We're trying to keep the ankle and the foot 100% passive, circle in the other way. And we're doing this movement from the arm, moving the fingers that are in between your toes. Did you ever see a cat stretch? When they stretch and yawn, they stretch their toes apart. They know all about this, right? He's passed out. Good. Now we're going to do pointing and flexing, again, with the use of the hands. So you're going to pull the toes away from the ankle to point, and then you bring the toes toward the knee to flex the ankle. And do that nice and slow, nice and evenly. If you're getting a lot of sound effects like cracking, you might be moving a little bit too fast or a little further than your joint wants to move right now. And then pause. Now find that thumb pad without removing your fingers from the toe spaces. Reach your thumb alongside the big toe side of the foot as low as it goes. Give a little push to the thumb, a little compression, and then drag that upward toward the toe, but you're stopping right below the toe knuckle. So you're going from let's say the middle of the arch up maybe just about an inch. And if that doesn't feel good, or if it feels good, but you want to do something else, if your thumb could reach part of the sole of your foot on the big toe side, you can certainly do that as well, but you're stroking upward toward the toes. That feels nice. And then just pause here, still with your fingers in place. Take a breath. And then when you're ready, slide the fingers out and just wiggle the toes around. Wiggle the toes a little bit. Stretch your legs out in front of you. And just notice how your feet feel. And feel free to look at your feet. Don't be shy. And just notice if you notice anything about your feet. And then just take the legs out and in a few times like that, nice and easy. Out and in. And then point and flex just a little bit, like flipper. So now you don't have your hand to do it. Now your ankles have to work, and keep it really super subtle, really super subtle. Good. We're going to transition to hands and knees for a few movements. And even though Albus is very, very sweet, I'm going to shift him a little bit. So when you come to hands and knees, know that you may want to have a little propping under your knees. So maybe the mat is not enough. So feel free to get some padding underneath your knees. If you like, you could unfold a blanket. I thought did I hear a question? Oh, you're meowing again. He's meowing really loud. I thought it was someone asking a question. So you could open up a blanket and set your hands in line with your shoulders. And we're going to start with some cat-cow variations. So your traditional cat-cow. And Chris and anyone else who has back issues, make sure your back, I'm just going to sag here a little bit, really letting my belly take over. And my arch, you might be able to see on my back, is quite large here. And that's really larger than it needs to be. So I'm going to lift my belly up a little bit. In addition to that, I'm going to kind of broaden my low back. And you might not see too much difference, but you probably can see that my back isn't as curved. So make sure that your low back curve doesn't take over when you're in this position. Inhale a breath here in neutral spine. And as you exhale, shift your hips back toward your heels, or in my case, back toward the cat, lengthening your arms and lengthening your side waist. As you inhale, come forward. Take a small back bend, but not by just sinking your belly down to arch the back, but a long back bend from the crown of your tail all along the spine, from the crown of your head, to your tail. Exhale, neutral spine, slip your hips back toward your heels. So this variation of cat-cow avoids excessive rounding in the upper back. So I can't see any of you. I know some of you by your names, But if your low back is really rounded, and if when you lie on the back, it's really uncomfortable, this is definitely the way to do this pose. Alternatively, in the traditional cat-cow, which you probably know, the inhale is the same, a back bend, but again, sometimes you'll see people like really like tipping the tail up as high as they can go, which really just puts the back bend right in your low back, which doesn't really need any more articulation because it has a lot. And the exhale in the traditional cat-cow is forehead to pubic bone. Now, there's nothing bad about this movement. So if you don't have osteopenia or osteoporosis, or if you don't feel your upper back is excessively rounded, you can just do this variation, or you can alternate. I like to alternate myself. That works for me. So I get in a lot of movement. Sometimes I lift my wrists up and come to my fingertips when I slide. Remember, when you come back, hips to heels, they don't have to go back far. Be respectful of your knees. So you could alternate the versions of which variation of the forward bend you want to do, the sliding the hips back to child's pose, or the more traditional bringing the forehead toward the pubic bone and really opening the upper back really super wide. The next time you are ready to come to a forward bend, come to child's pose. Take your hips back to your heels. They do not need to touch. Take your knees wide. And if you like, you can rest your head on your hands, or you could take a handy prop, a block or a blanket, and place your forearms there. We're not going to be here too long, but even for a minute, if you just know anytime you do child's pose, you can always take padding in between the backs of your thighs and your calves, so you have some padding back here. But just find a way that you could be comfortable. Relax your head down, bring your awareness to your upper back, and take a breath into your upper back. You can also do this sitting, but it's nice, and when we do this particular forward bend, it can really open up the back. Bring your awareness to your mid-back, where you think your mid-back might be, and take the next breath with a focus on your mid-back. So about here, you can see my hand, above the low back curve. With your next breath, bring your awareness to your low back curve, your lumbar spine. And of course, you don't have lungs in your lumbar spine, but breathe there. So we're just trying to just wake up the nervous system, in a sense, in these different places before we finish our day here. We just might find a little replenishment in some areas of the body that maybe got a little neglected. Good. And then when you're ready, come back to tabletop position. Now, because if you were folded deeply in child's pose, you want to now open up the space behind the backs of your knees. So tuck the toes of the right foot under, stretch the right leg back, and try and push back from the big toe side and the little toe side evenly. And maybe breathe into the back of your knee. We're not trying to force the back of the knee open. We don't have like muscles in the back of our knee, so we don't want to overstretch there. We do want to open that space up. And then drop the knee down and do the other side. Extend the left leg back, send the leg back, tuck the toes, reach through the big toe side and the little toe side. And if you like, breathe into the back of your knee. It would be cool to have some extra lungs there. Excellent. Good. And now, since we were on hands and knees a little bit, you might want to roll your wrists around. You could do that sitting on your knees, or sitting on your shins, or standing on your knees. Roll your wrists around a few times. And here we're going to, maybe yogis are going to do one thing and other yogis are going to do another. I'm going to offer you space and time to do down dog. I know some of you who come to class like that, but if you're having back issues, skip the down dog and do something different. So we can all start in the same place, start in table pose, and you could continue doing leg extensions if you'd rather not do downward facing dog. And you can add to a leg extension, taking, let's say, the right leg back and taking a balance challenge by reaching the left arm forward. So that's an option. Those of you, if you want to come to down dog, you can do that now if you like. And again, you could do both. In other words, you can tuck your toes. I have to make sure my cat's not going to get hit by my feet. Inhale a breath here. You could exhale. Hi, kitty. And lift up into down dog and pause there. And then you can lower your knees down and do the balance. So play around with whatever you think you'd like to do on this, what's turned out to be a stormy summer evening here in Westchester. That's where you're from. So just choose. Again, I miss seeing the students. I can't really see you. And if this is taped, of course, some of you could be watching on video. But just remember, when you're doing your down dog, you don't want to force your heels down. I'll give you some tips here. Just let the hips kind of drip, drip, drip down. Let your head be relaxed and heavy. And if you're doing the table balances, again, don't overdo. You could do that with the toes tucked and the leg down, or you can do it with the leg a few inches off the ground. Make sure, no matter what pose you're doing, the low back is very stable and broad. We don't want to, we had a nice little time on our mat when we started, so we don't want to mess up our low back and make it cranky. And then, whenever you've done what has you wished, whether you did a down dog or not, let's come to standing. So you can come forward through a lunge, or from down dog, you can walk your feet to your hands. Only because I don't always even do standing poses in this class. So since we were working on our feet earlier, it might be nice to come to standing and just get a sense of how your feet feel at the end of the day. Set your feet roughly parallel, like railroad tracks, close but not touching, and then look away. Let your arms just rest by your side. If you like, close your eyes. If that makes you feel like unbalanced, you could hold on to something or not close your eyes. And then once you've closed your eyes, if you do so, notice if what you're thinking your feet are doing is the same thing from the way you place them. Or does it feel like your feet are doing something completely different? Notice that. Good. Then join your hands together at your heart center. Inhale a breath. And as you exhale, just release your arms down. Inhale, take your arms out. Not reach your arms up as high as you like. They may be overhead, maybe not. Find your fingertips and join your hands together. And bring your prayer pose down to your heart center. Easy inhale, smooth exhale. And then take your feet a little wide, not wide as if you were going to do warrior two, but not parallel. I'm just going to do a little hip gliding. So take your hands to your hips and just shift your hips minutely from side to side. And try and keep your shoulders and head pretty neutral. If it looks like I'm hardly moving, it's because I am hardly moving at all. I'm not exaggerating the movement because I wanted to show you how subtle it is. So you're bringing the hips from side to side. Then the next time your hips slide over to your right, stay there. Just stay there. And you might feel that your torso is tilted a little bit to the left, which is fine. Good. And just notice how your legs feel. Lengthen both legs, the one that's a little further, it feels it's a little further out because of the way the hips are, and the one that feels more like it's underneath you. Really, they're both underneath you. Bring your hips back to center. They probably, ideally, they're not traveling too far. We're not trying to take it as far as we can. Glide your hips over to the second side and just pause here. Notice if all the weight is on one foot. Make sure both legs are supporting your weight here and there's weight on both feet. Good. Shift your hips back to center. Bring your feet back to parallel. Let's do one standing balance pose here. Let's come to tree pose. And if you would like to have a chair to hold on to, or a wall or a handy windowsill, feel free to find something to hold on to. Set your feet parallel again. And then just wiggle your toes around a little bit. It's hard to wiggle them while we're standing, but we can do it. Just move the toes around, and then relax the toes. And then see if you can think of spreading your toes wide, like when we had the fingers in between the toes. You can even look down and kind of will them. So like a cat, widen your toes, spread the toes nice and wide, relax your arms. So I'm going to start suggesting how to make your right leg your tree trunk. You can choose the other way, but remember, you got to do both sides. You're going to bend your left knee and take the knee out just a little bit. I mean, you could take it out a lot if you have your practice allows for this and you're very open hips, but maybe do open the leg a little less. So if you're usually here, maybe bring it here and connect the heel gently to the standing leg. You could also slide that hopefully relaxed foot up a little bit and nestle it against your leg. Join your hands to your heart center. Even off your hips as best they can. The straight leg hip will usually pop out. So try and even the hips off. shine the crown of your head toward the sky. Take a few breaths here. And remember, you can always grow some branches. I don't know, it's now the storm has reached here. So we have the storm in Yonkers. So maybe you don't want branches. Maybe they're going to blow too much. If you do tree a lot and this tree is too mellow for you and you want to zest it up a little bit, feel free to close your eyes gently. It doesn't challenge the body more, but it challenges the nervous system and your sense of where you are in space. So that's just an option for you. And then when you're ready, join your hands together, remove that foot, place it down, and just shift the weight back and forth from one foot to another. Don't take the weight completely off. So a little bit in honor of my assistant Albus, kind of a little cat-like movement, side to side. Some people say sneaky. I would just say lovely and graceful. And then let's come back to center and do our tree on the other side. So now think of your left leg growing roots to the ground, but not rigid. We don't want to be one of those rigid trees. We want to be a strong, but kind of flexible tree. Bend your right knee, lift the heel up, and then again, your hip, everyone's hip rotation is different. So I can open my leg pretty wide, but sometimes I'd rather just do a little less. So find what works for you. And the heel is resting lightly on the standing leg, or you could slide the foot up. There is a connection between the bent leg foot and the leg, but try not to make it too, we're not doing the Thor version of tree. We're doing Wednesday night, summer, relaxed tree, maybe like a palm tree. And if you like, take your arms up. One thing that's fun to do sometimes is hold the tree, but move your arms around. But just don't look at anybody doing that, because don't look at the screen if you're doing that. So you can just kind of move around a little bit. Try and find evenness on the outer edge and the inner edge of your standing leg foot. And then when you're ready, release the foot. Come back to your little cat movement, nice back and forth. And then maybe take the arms up on one side and stretch. I know my arms are going off screen, and take the arms up on one side and stretch, lifting the opposite heel. And do that again, just lengthening your body out, lengthening the lines of your body. Good. And then come back to standing. We're going to make our way back to the mat. We don't have a very long time for this class. And I like to do a supported back bend, possibly with modifications for those of you who need it. So I might offend my cat a little bit. I might need to move him, but I'm going to try not to. He's actually on the yoga blanket, which is actually what I wanted to use. But that's why we have towels, right? So you're gonna need 2 blankets, yoga blankets or towels. This is a beach towel. So you want to fold it in a way so you get a long, narrow rectangle that is, it's going to range on the towel. I would say this is maybe 7 or 8 inches wide. So it's narrower than you, narrower than the broadest part of your back. That's important. And I'm going to have my head on this end of the mat, just so for orientation. So you place that down and your back is going to go on that. Now where your head is going to go, take another blanket or a pillow and place it at the top. So the 2 blankets together make a capital letter T. And just know that if you do a lot of yoga and you want more of a back bend, this blanket can be, you could double it up. You can see this is not very thick. This is thinner than a yoga blanket would be. So this is going to dictate kind of how big the back bend is going to be, but it's going to be subtle no matter what. Now, if you have a bolster, you can place the bolster down at the lower end of the mat where your legs are going to go, or another pillow, and you can rest your legs on the bolster. To come into the pose, you're going to place your bum right on the mat in front of that long blanket. Now, just be mindful if you have sensitivity, as I talked about in the beginning, in the tail, you might want to even have another blanket, like the one my cat's sitting on. You might want to have another blanket under here, so you're totally cushioned. Can I have that blanket? No, that's okay. So if you need a blanket there, get the blanket, but you're not sitting, the vertical blanket, the first one we made, you're not sitting on that one for this pose. So you sit with your tush on the floor or on another blanket, carefully take your legs out so you don't disturb the cat, because he'll get offended. So normally I would not have my feet this wide, but bend your knees, place your feet on the floor, and then using your arm strength a little bit, ease yourself down. The length of your spine is going to be on that long blanket. If you're pretty short, you might find that your head is on the same blanket, and that might be fine. But if you're taller, your head will be on the other the top of the T. And if you just happen to like your head to be a little higher, you can certainly prop your head up a little higher, regardless of whether your head landed on the first blanket or not. So make sure your legs are comfortable. If your knees are bent and you don't have a prop, you could rest your inner knees together. That's very relaxing. Take your arms down by your side and close your eyes. I'm not going to treat myself to the pose. I'm just going to be here for a minute, and then I'm just going to give you some pointers, and I'll do that sitting up. But just make sure you're comfortable. I'm just going to give you a visual of one way to experience this. Again, you can have your legs looped over a bolster. We want to make sure that we're comfortable. So you may be thinking, well, where's the back bend? You look like you're just laying down. I do have a little back bend going, and it's all in my upper back, because what the blanket does, what the vertical blanket does underneath your shoulder blades, it kind of scoops that area of the upper back up, as if your shoulder blades were gently being, how I put it, your shoulder blades are being scooped up and lifted. And then from that lift, then as you take your arms out, the outer edges of your shoulder blades come down. So in a back bend, in a simple back bend like Cobra, if we're doing a low Cobra, the back bend, even though it involves the whole spine, it is culminating in an openness in the front of the upper chest, right up there, right in the collarbones and a little below. That's where we are creating this restorative back bend. We want everything to be calm, everything to be comfortable, but just maybe a little more space, a little more width across the collarbones, and maybe just a little ease all around in the spine. If you like, close your eyes and remain in the back bend. Remain in the back bend. If at any time you feel, I don't want to be in this back bend anymore, the teacher hasn't said to come out, you have control over that. If you need to leave the back sooner, I'll explain the exit strategy so you know that. You would bend your knees, you would roll over to your side, and you would come to sitting up. But I have decided I'm definitely staying in the back bend for another few breaths. It feels too yummy. Surrender the weight of the body downward. Rest your inner knees together. I'm going to tuck my toes here under my blanket, under my prop that my cat has taken control of. Notice if your hands are relaxed, or if the activities of the day make you want to clench your hands. Let your hands just go. Let your fingers relax. Let your toes let go. Let your feet be soft. And then bring your awareness to your upper chest. If you like, you could rest a hand on your upper chest to get feedback of the movement through your hand, but you don't have to. And as you inhale, allow the inhale just to be a little bit longer. You don't have to breathe more. You could just slow the inhale down. Notice if you feel a little lift in the chest. And as you exhale, let that go. Good. Now bring your awareness to your side ribs. You can bring your hands there if that's comfortable. So think of the side ribs above the waistline. And as you inhale, take that lengthened out, easeful breath, and notice if you feel as if the ribs were gently expanding against the inner skin. And then you might feel that against your hands. And exhale and let that go. And then do that again, focusing on your right and left sides, in a sense, the sides of your lungs. You could even bring your awareness up into the armpits, not that you have lungs there, and take a nice, comfortable, slow, luxurious breath here. And then slide your awareness underneath you to your back. And think about the backs of your lungs expanding, even though you can't get your hands there. As you inhale, take a slightly bigger breath and notice if you feel the back body maybe expanding, pressing against the blankets underneath you, or you just feel something going on back there. Don't try and create a pressing down in the back. Let it come. Let the expansion of the back come from the breath within, expanding you. And then let that go. If you like, put all of those places together, the upper chest, the upper back, the sides of your rib cage, and take a smooth, long breath, expanding gently in all those places without force. You're just noticing the expansion that's already there. And notice as you exhale, the subtle condensing. How does that feel? Does it feel easeful? Does it feel like you're sinking deeper down into the props? Do you feel like you're letting something go besides your breath? When you're ready to release the back bend, and you don't have to come out just yet, but I'm going to give you your exit strategy. You take your feet parallel with your knees over your ankles, and then you push into your feet a little bit, shift your hips to one side and roll to the other side. And you might end up, depending on what blanket or towel you use, it might be comfortable enough just to have that underneath you, or you may want to pull it out from behind you right away so it's not underneath you at all. You may need to double up on your head support here because we're lying on our side. Because of our broad, sturdy shoulders, we need good head support here. And then when you are ready, make your way up, sitting nice and slow. Use your arm strength. We're going to do one seated twist. Move your props to the side, but remember, if you want to have a blanket or two underneath your bum, take a blanket or two underneath your bum. Sit nice and tall, lining up the length of your spine, and take your arms out beside you like a frame. You do not have to sit cross-legged. Feel free not to sit cross-legged. You can sit any way you like. We're going to be twisting to your right first. So take your right hand and bring it slightly behind you, kind of on an angle back from your right butt cheek, but not far from you. Take your left arm up by your ear. If that's uncomfortable, you could just take your left arm right across to the opposite leg, or you could just touch your shoulder if you can get your arm all the way up. Inhale a breath here. Find the length of your spine on both sides. And as you exhale, small twist of the upper part, basically the area we were opening in that back bend we did. So that's where we're leading the twist from. Ooh, big thunder. Sorry about that. Startled me. And then bring your hand down to the opposite leg, or if the opposite leg feels like too far to reach, you could just bring it down. If you have cross legs, I like now that when I do the twist to bring my hand down to the cross, and I find that gives me a little more opening and spaciousness in the chest. Take a few breaths here in your twist. Don't force the twist. Relax your legs, particularly since you're twisted to the right. Your left leg might have tensed up a little bit. So invite that left leg to relax. Sitting bones relax. Toes relax. Notice if your toes are like curling or something. Your toes are like trying to pay attention and get involved in the twist. You have soft toes, relaxed hands. Take one more breath here. On your next inhale, unwind, wrap your spine forward. You can take your arms up if you like. You don't have to do that. Bring your arms down. Pet your cat if he or she is handy. If you did the twist cross-legged, you may want to just change the cross of your legs, just so you're not sitting in the same position you're usually sitting, because chances are you might always cross your leg with the same one in front. Find that little A-frame with your arms and the gentle upright length of your spine. Good. Take your left arm slightly behind you, but not so far behind that when you twist, you lean back. Take your right arm up or a hand on the shoulder if that's comfortable for you. Inhale. And as you exhale, condense your belly a little bit and then twist that upper third of your torso. So you're going to twist from the upper back, shoulder blade area, shoulder girdle, collarbone area. Lower that front arm down, reset your back arm if you don't like it. And if you're twisting to your left, make sure your right leg is relaxed. And if it can't relax, that might mean if your right leg is your opposite, if we're twisting in one direction and the other leg is tense, you may need to do a little bit softer twist. So feel free to do that now. Soften up that twist. Take a few breaths here. Notice the broadness of your back. Notice the anchors of your sitting bones. Notice the subtle movements in your chest, in your side, wherever you notice it as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And then when you're ready, slowly unwind. Get everything that you'd like to have for Shavasana around, because we're going to be there in like 2 minutes. But before we do Shavasana, since we did some stuff with our feet, it might be nice to do some leg stretches too, for which you can use a yoga strap if you have one. If you don't have a yoga strap, you could use, actually, if you have a really, well, you can use a long towel to do it, but sometimes you have to like wrap the towel to make it really narrow so it doesn't fall on your face. You could also use an old tie or a belt. So again, get everything you want to have for Shavasana so you don't have to get up again, right? And then come to lying down, and if you like, take your prop under your head. I'm going to take a chance here that Mr. Claus over here doesn't want to give me a new hairdo with my head here. Are you okay there, buddy? So just come to lying down and just know if you're ready for Shavasana now, just go ahead in. You can skip this part if you don't want to do this little leg stretch. And then when you're ready, bend your knees, place your feet on the floor. Draw your right leg in toward your chest, strap the leg, and instead of sending it straight up, take it out on a diagonal and get the leg as straight as you can without force. Don't force it to straighten. If it feels okay, if and only if it feels okay, and only if your knee doesn't bend more, because you want to have the leg fairly straight, take the leg up to vertical. Toes relax, check out your toes, see how they're doing, wiggle them up there. And just notice if you feel a gentle stretch in the back of your leg. The toes are looking either to the wall behind you, or if it's more comfortable for your leg to be lower, if your leg can be straight or lower, your toes are looking kind of up to the ceiling. Now from here, keep your leg in the same position it is in terms of whether it's vertical or on a diagonal, and just pivot the leg from the hip joint. So you're turning, your toes and your knee are now looking a little bit toward the right. And now the stretch that was in the back of your leg may have shifted to the outer side of your lower leg or your upper leg. And then bring the leg back to neutral. And then turn the leg out just a fraction toward the right. And then bring the leg in. Turn it out toward the right. Keep the leg turned out to the right. And your bent left knee, tip the left knee toward the right and take your right leg, which is turned to the right, keep it turned to the right, but bring it toward the midline. So the knees, in a sense, cat in my face, are looking toward each other. And this might give you a nice stretch for the hips. It also might help to broaden your, make your low back feel broader. And then release that. Bend the right knee, remove the strap, place the foot on the floor, strap up the left leg, send it out on a diagonal here. See if you can get the leg straight. Don't force it straight. But if your leg is straighter here, that's where you're going to keep your leg. If you can keep your leg straight and have it vertical, that's good. But it's also good here. So just reach the leg long. Let the strap support the leg so it doesn't have to work. Notice where you feel the stretch. If you can see your toes, wiggle them around, spread them wide. And then when you're ready, no matter where your leg is in relation to the floor or ceiling, spin the leg out. So the toes and the knee is looking a little bit toward the left. Bring it back to neutral. Here, the stretch is more in the back of the leg somewhere. We don't want to feel sensation in the back of the knee. If you feel that, bend the knee or lower the leg more. Take the leg out from the hip joint. Bring the leg back to neutral. One more time, take the leg out. So if you're looking at when it's neutral, we're looking at the knee. Now we should be looking kind of at the inner knee. Keep the leg turned out. Take your bent leg knee and tip it over toward your left, and take your turned out left leg, keep it turned out, and drag it a little bit toward the right. So the knees are kind of coming toward the midline. Relax your jaw. Make sure your feet are relaxed, that they're not cringing. Don't force anything. And then bring the knees back to the start position. Bend your left knee, remove the strap. And before you come into Shavasana, if you like, come to where you started, lying on the mat with your knees bent or your legs straight, wherever you started. Notice how your mat meets the mat. Do you feel more contact with the surface of the mat? If you like, turn your head a little bit from side to side. Does the neck turn a little bit more smoothly? With your head back to center, notice if your head feels more even. Do you feel that you have a nice curve in the back of the neck, also open in the front, center back of the skull is down? And now get as cozy as you can. Add any props you like to have underneath your head, underneath your hips. Cover yourself with a blanket. The rains that are pouring down, I feel a lot of cold air coming in, so you might feel a little chillier in the room you started your practice, from when you started your practice. Get cozy, get warm, get as many things around you that you like, that make you feel warm and snuggly and happy. And close your eyes like soft curtains. Invite your body to slide into not a very long, but a very delicious Shavasana. As you let your head relax, invite your thoughts to relax. Surrender it all, even your wisdom, even your great ideas. Let that all go for now. Surrender the stuff you carry on your shoulders. Soften your shoulders down without pressing them. Just soften your right shoulder down toward the earth and soften your left shoulder down toward the earth. Soften your jaw. Relax your teeth and your lips. Make sure that your belly is soft, that your bottom is soft. Whether your legs are straight or bent with the feet on the mat and the inner knees together, just like make sure your legs are super relaxed, right down to those toes, right down to the skin on the soles of your feet. Just like a cat, when a cat relaxes, it means business. It takes relaxing very seriously. When cats are really sleeping, I mean, yeah, they could wake up at a certain sound, but they're like 20 pounds more than their actual weight. If you pick them up when they're sleeping, they're so heavy and they're so limp and they're so relaxed. So even if you don't have cats, or if you don't even like cats, or if you're allergic to them, relax like a cat. Be a big soft lump of mush. And take a few more moments here to let go in any way that you can. Even though we don't make the sound of a purr, hopefully you can find such a nice few moments of quiet that in some sense, deep inside of you, your heart is purring. Let your breaths just unfold easefully. Breathing in and out. Letting go where you can let go. Surrender to stillness and ease and warmth. And the end, or the final act in a busy day. That's all that's ahead of you, and then sleep. So prepare for that final act with a few more moments of stillness. When you're ready, bring your awareness back to your breath. You may want to deepen your breath a little bit. You may want to focus the awareness of your breath somewhere in the body, like we did a few times during class. You may want to focus the breath into your upper chest, the sides of your ribs, the right side, the left side, or sides. Just breathe into any space that is calling for a little attention. Even if it's your toes, you can imagine you could breathe into your toe spaces. And then when you're ready, bend your knees and place your feet on your mat. Ease your way over to your most comfortable side and stay there for a few moments. Make sure your head is relaxed and on something nice and soft and supported. Bend your knees if you have a handy blanket. If the weight of your top leg on the bottom feels kind of heavy, you could take a blanket in between the two legs, which might feel nice. And while you're lying on your side, it's a great opportunity to breathe into your back. And then if you're ready, when you're ready, come up to a comfortable seated position. It does not have to be cross-legged. Any seat that feels good. Take that hopefully relaxed body of yours, and without tensing it, just invite it to be long and tall. Send the crown of your head up toward the sky. If you like, join your hands. Thank your body for all it offers you. Honor your body and your feet and your hands, all of you, for all the work they do. And most of all, take good care of yourself so you have a long and healthy summer ahead. Namaste. So Albus and I wish you a good night.